In a universe where dreams don't exist and creativity is considered a flaw, I committed the ultimate transgression. I fell in love with a human who only existed in the pages of a book. But that was just the beginning of how I, Kadra, would change everything we knew about both our worlds. The ancient library stood before me, its crystalline spires reaching toward our triple moons. Unlike the sleek, digital interfaces that dominated our world, this place held something far more precious. Physical books. Real, tangible stories brought by humans who saw our empty shelves as an invitation to share their culture. I remember the first time I touched a book. The texture of paper beneath my fingers felt almost illicit. In our society where everything was digitized and efficiency reigned supreme, these physical objects were considered primitive relics. Yet here I was, surrounded by thousands of them, each one a gateway to a world where imagination wasn't just tolerated, but celebrated. My people, the Sirans, had long ago abandoned such primitive forms of information storage. Our libraries stood empty for centuries until the humans arrived. They saw our vacant shelves not as a sign of progress, but as an opportunity to share their culture. The human who filled our libraries spoke of an obsession with books, a concept that both intrigued and confused our leaders. The scent of aged paper filled my nostrils as I traced my fingers along the spines of countless volumes. That's where I first met Alexander, not in person, but through words that would forever change my life. His story was different from anything I'd ever encountered. While our histories were mere recordings of facts and figures, his tale pulsed with life, adventure, and something our society had long forgotten: emotion. Alexander wasn't perfect. His skin bore scars from countless battles, his decisions often defied logic, and his heart led him down paths that any rational being would avoid. Yet it was these very imperfections that made him extraordinary. In our world of calculated precision and predetermined paths, his unpredictability was intoxicating. The library became my sanctuary. Every free moment I could steal away from my engineering duties was spent here, devouring stories of Earth, of humans, and of their inexplicable way of life. They had something we'd lost generations ago: the ability to dream beyond the possible, to imagine worlds that didn't exist, to feel deeply and without restraint. My mother noticed the changes in me first. "Kadra," she'd say, her voice carrying that tone of concern that all siren parents seem to master. "You're becoming distracted. Your efficiency ratings have dropped 12.3% this cycle." She was right, of course. The numbers didn't lie. They never did in our world. But, for the first time in my life, I didn't care about the numbers. The books had awakened something in me that couldn't be quantified or measured. Each story added another crack to the perfect, logical world I'd been raised in. I began to question things I'd never dared question before. Why did we abandon creativity? Why did we fear emotion? Why did we choose to live in a world stripped of color and passion? My questions found no answers among my people. Our teachers spoke of the Great Rationalization, the period when our ancestors chose logic over chaos, efficiency over emotion. They praised this decision as the pinnacle of civilization, but now I wondered if we'd lost something precious in the process. I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. The way our cities rose in perfect geometric patterns, every building identical to the next. The rhythmic precision of our daily routines, each moment scheduled and optimized. Even our conversations followed predetermined patterns, designed for maximum information transfer with minimum emotional interference. But the humans in my books, they were different. They built cities that sprawled in beautiful chaos, each structure unique and purposefully imperfect. They spent hours in what they called casual conversation, speaking of things that had no practical value. They created art not because it served a purpose, but simply because it moved their souls. And Alexander, he embodied everything we'd been taught to reject. He made decisions based on instinct rather than calculation. He valued loyalty over efficiency, love over logic. His world was messy, unpredictable, and gloriously alive. I found myself staying up late into the night, long past my designated rest period, lost in these stories. I'd imagine what it would be like to live in a world where emotion wasn't seen as a weakness, where creativity wasn't considered a flaw. Sometimes, I'd catch myself doing something that would horrify my peers. I'd daydream. The changes in me became harder to hide. During our mandatory social integration periods, I'd catch myself using phrases from the books, expressing ideas that made my fellow sirens uncomfortable. My siblings started avoiding me at family gatherings, as if my newfound irregularity might be contagious. Only my youngest brother, Rimkin, showed any interest. He'd seek me out in the library sometimes, his eyes wide with curiosity as I told him about the human stories. "But how do they function without efficiency protocols?" he'd ask, genuinely puzzled. I didn't have an answer, but I was beginning to understand that perhaps function wasn't everything. Then came the day that changed everything. A human cargo ship docked at our spaceport, a rare occurrence that usually went unnoticed by most Sirans, but this time was different. This time, I had a plan. Hey Space Explorers, if you've been following Kadra's journey so far, smash that like button and hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next in this interstellar adventure. Turn on that notification bell because things are about to get wild. The human cargo ship loomed before me, its massive hull gleaming under our triple moons. Unlike our sleek, efficient vessels, this ship was a beautiful mess of seemingly random protrusions and asymmetrical design choices. The name The Abyss was emblazoned across its side in what I'd learned was called graffiti style, another wonderfully illogical human concept. My heart thundered in my chest as I approached, clutching my bag filled with precious books and the few personal items I couldn't bear to leave behind. The security systems were supposedly impenetrable, but I'd spent months studying them, looking for patterns, for weaknesses. Our society's obsession with order made even our chaos predictable. I'd chosen this night carefully. The atmospheric conditions would interfere with the long-range scanners, and the security drones followed a precise pattern I'd memorized. 3 steps forward, wait 7 seconds, then slip between the patrol zones. Just like Alexander would do, I thought, though he'd probably have some witty remark ready for when he inevitably got caught. The first barrier was easy. Our security systems were designed to keep humans out, not sirens in. The second barrier required timing. I counted under my breath, moving in perfect synchronization with the patrol drone's blind spots. One miscalculation and the entire spaceport would know of my transgression. I was so focused on the mechanical security that I completely missed the organic component. The click of a weapon behind my head froze me in place, my carefully planned escape crumbling around me. That move," a voice said in perfect Syrian, though the accent was clearly artificial. "State your reason for approaching a human vessel without authorization." The metallic voice belonged to a figure shrouded in black, wearing what appeared to be an electronic mask. In that moment, all my careful planning seemed foolish. I'd prepared for automated systems and predictable patterns, but not for an actual confrontation. "I want to see the stars," I blurted out, surprising myself with the truth. "I want to understand how humans live, how they dream, how they create." My voice trembled, but I forced myself to stand straight, channeling what little I knew of human courage. The figure tilted its head, an oddly organic gesture for something that appeared so mechanical. "Interesting," it said, the artificial voice carrying a note of what might have been amusement. "Most intruders we catch are trying to steal technology or trade secrets. This is different." I noticed something then. White fangs peeking out from beneath the electronic mask. The figure wasn't entirely mechanical after all. "What's in the bag?" it asked, weapon still trained on me. Slowly, I opened my bag, revealing the books inside. Human literature, I explained. Stories about heroes and adventures, about people who changed their worlds. The figure lowered its weapon slightly. "You're a reader." Now there was definitely amusement in that voice. "Show me your favorite." With shaking hands, I pulled out my most treasured volume, the 3rd book in Alexander's series. The figure reached out with its free hand, gently taking the book. The way it handled the volume, with careful reverence, told me everything I needed to know. "I'm Nathan," the figure said, deactivating its mask to reveal a face that was surprisingly human-like, despite the fangs. "Captain of the Abyss. And you might just be the most interesting potential stowaway I've ever encountered." Before I could respond, the world shifted around me. One moment we were standing in the spaceport, the next we were inside what appeared to be a control room. The teleportation was so seamless that I dropped my bag in surprise, sending books scattering across the polished floor. Nathan gave me a quick tour of the Abyss, and each step revealed something more fascinating than the last. The ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a floating city, complete with gardens, entertainment centers, and what they called coffee shops. Everything about it defied our principles of efficiency, yet somehow it all worked perfectly. My temporary quarters were larger than my entire family pod back home. The ship adapts to each species' needs, Nathan explained as the room's colors shifted to the soothing blues that Surround's preferred. You'll find everything you need here, including a replicator for clothes and basic necessities. That first night aboard the Abyss, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, watching the stars through a window that shouldn't have existed. Windows were structural weaknesses, after all, but humans seemed to value the view more than the minor efficiency loss. The next few days were a whirlwind of new experiences. I met John, the ship's doctor, who painted watercolors in his spare time, a concept that would have been unthinkable in my world. There was Maria, the navigation specialist, who wrote poetry between plotting courses. Each crew member seemed to have what they called hobbies, activities that served no practical purpose except personal enjoyment. Then came the interview with Hatnote. I'd expected another efficiency assessment, like the countless ones I'd endured back home. Instead, I found myself in a virtual forest, surrounded by beings straight out of my beloved books, elves, dwarves, and even a fae named Adriana. They asked me about stories, about creativity, about my dreams for the future. Not once did they mention efficiency ratings or productivity metrics. It was the strangest interview I'd ever experienced, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen. The next morning, Nathan found me in the ship's library. Yes, they had a physical library on board. "Congratulations," he said, grinning. "You're in. The nerds back at HQ loved you. Said something about your understanding of their culture being refreshing." I stared at him, hardly daring to believe it. "I'm accepted? I can stay?" "Welcome to the crew, Kadra," he replied. "Though I should warn you, this is just the beginning. Life with humans is never predictable." As I sat there, surrounded by books in a library that floated among the stars, I realized something profound. Back home we had a saying, "Efficiency is the path to perfection." But perhaps perfection wasn't about efficiency at all. Perhaps it was about embracing the beautiful chaos that made life worth living. This was the end of my old life and the beginning of something new, something wonderful, something terrifyingly unpredictable. And I couldn't wait to see what happened next. Wow, what an incredible journey we've shared together. If you've enjoyed following Kadra's escape from her perfectly ordered world into the beautiful chaos of human space, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to catch part 2. You won't want to miss what happens next, as Kadra begins her training aboard the Abyss, discovers more mind-blowing human customs, and perhaps finds something even more unexpected than she bargained for. Will she adapt to this new unpredictable life? What challenges await her among the stars? Hit that notification bell right now to be the first to know when part 2 drops. And hey, let me know in the comments below. What would you do if you discovered your whole society had been missing out on dreams and creativity? What books would you take with you on an interstellar adventure? Part 2 is coming soon, and trust me, things are about to get even more interesting. See you all among the stars.